It started on a Wednesday, with my calendar screaming 9 a.m. emergency compliance review in bright red like it was trying to warn me. By 9:07, my manager, Darren Klein, slid a printed email across the conference table toward HR like a dealer laying down a bad hand. By 9:12, I was staring at my own name on a document I'd never written, an approval record for a vendor payment that never should have been approved. The room sounded wrong. Too quiet. Not professional quiet. More like the building itself was holding its breath. Across from me sat Mavis from HR, a woman with the calm face of someone who'd already drafted the conclusion. Next to her was Elliot from compliance, who kept glancing at the door like he was hoping for a fire drill. Mavis didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "Lee," she said gently, like we were discussing a scheduling conflict and not my paycheck, "can you explain why your credentials authorized this transfer?" I stared at the paper. My employee ID, my digital signature, a timestamp. My stomach did that slow elevator drop it does when something is about to become a story you don't want to tell anyone. "I didn't," I said. "I didn't authorize anything." Darren leaned back, lacing his fingers over his stomach, calm as a man watching someone else's mess unfold from a safe distance. "That's what you're saying," he replied, "but the logs don't lie." He delivered it like a fact of nature, like gravity, like he'd said it so many times he believed it was a law. I worked at Marrowgate Solutions, a mid-sized operations company tucked into the glassy downtown of Larkspur City, where the skyline tried very hard to look important. We weren't famous. We weren't glamorous. But we sold stability the way other companies sold dreams. I was a senior operations analyst in procurement oversight. I lived for clean numbers, tidy audit trails, and the quiet satisfaction of catching small mistakes before they became expensive ones. This wasn't small. $48,600 rooted to a vendor called Brightstep, consulting for a systems advisory package. Except Brightstep wasn't on our approved vendor list. Except the purchase order was marked Rush. Except the approval timestamp was 2:14 a.m. At 2:14 a.m., I was asleep, drooling on my pillow like a person who pays rent on time and doesn't approve midnight mystery transfers. Mavis slid another page toward me. "It confirmed the login came from your account." My mouth went dry. "I have multi-factor authentication." "We see the MFA approval," Darren said, almost cheerfully. "It's right there." He tapped the paper with one neat fingernail. Darren always kept his nails clean, polished, composed, impossible to catch messy. I'd spent 9 months under Darren, long enough to understand his favorite sport was quiet humiliation. He didn't shout. He didn't slam doors. He preferred the clean cut, a pointed comment in a meeting, a just-checking email with 10 people CC'd, a casual mention of your learning curve during reviews. Now he was doing it on the biggest stage he could arrange. Mavis folded her hands. "Lee, I need you to answer clearly. Did you authorize this payment?" "No." "Did you share your login?" "Never." "Did anyone have access to your phone?" "No." Darren's expression softened into something like disappointment. "Lee, if you made a mistake, this is the time to be honest." That did it. That gentle, careful phrasing, like he was offering me a way out of a problem I'd caused. My heart hammered. "I didn't make a mistake," I said. "I'm being set up." The words landed on the table like a dropped stapler. Darren's eyebrows rose. "Set up? By who?" I looked at him. I looked at Mavis. I looked at Elliot, who suddenly found his notepad fascinating. And I realized something sharp and ugly. This room wasn't built for truth. It was built for closure. Mavis exhaled. "Lee, accusations like that are serious." "So is firing someone for something they didn't do," I said. Darren's smile didn't reach his eyes. "No one wants to fire you, but policy is policy." Then, with a small nod from compliance, barely a movement, Mavis spoke the sentence that turned my life inside out. "Effective today, your employment is terminated for violation of financial authorization policy." There was paperwork. A stiff handshake that felt like pressing my palm into cold clay. A security escort who tried to be kind, which somehow made it worse. I carried my things in a cardboard box like a cliché, a mug with a hairline crack, A notebook full of vendor notes. My office plant, which had survived on spite and fluorescent light. Darren didn't walk me out. He watched from the hallway, hands in his pockets, wearing the satisfied look of a man who just cleared space on the org chart. As the elevator doors closed, I saw him mouth something. I couldn't hear it, but I could read lips. Finally! Outside, the city didn't care that I'd been professionally erased at 9:12 a.m. on a Wednesday. Cars hissed over wet pavement. People held coffees like shields. A delivery truck beeped like it too had been wronged by corporate procedure. I stood on the sidewalk with my cardboard box and felt the heat rise behind my eyes, not just anger, but humiliation. The kind that makes you want to crawl out of your own skin. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Jaya, my friend in finance. Jaya, Lee. Are you okay? I heard Darren's telling people you admitted it. Jaya, you didn't write. Because I know you, I laughed once. It came out like a cough. Me, I didn't, and he can tell whatever bedtime story he wants. Me, I'm going to prove it. Jaya replied with a single line that felt like a hand on my shoulder. Jaya, if you're going to do that, do it smart. They'll try to bury you. I stared up at the Marrowgate building, glass and steel, reflecting clouds like it had nothing to hide. Darren had framed me. He'd done it cleanly enough to satisfy policy. Logs pointed at me. HR had their neat conclusion. The story would spread fast. But Darren had made one mistake, and it was the mistake people like him always make. He believed I'd collapse. Instead, I went home, set the cardboard box on my kitchen table, and opened my laptop like I was clocking in for the most important job of my life. Not revenge in the dramatic sense. No shouting in lobbies. No grand speeches, just proof. First, I made a list. Not an emotional list. Not a Darren is the worst list, although that list would have been long and honestly good for the soul. A real list. What happened, facts only. What evidence exists, logs, approvals, onboarding trail. Who benefits, who has access, what I can legally obtain, because if I was going to fight this, I had to do it in a way that couldn't be waved away as a disgruntled former employee. I needed a trail that could survive lawyers. The transfer was at 2:14 a.m. My MFA was approved. That meant one of two things. Someone had my phone or my authenticator access, or someone had pushed my account onto a weaker fallback method, something convenient the company pretended was harmless. I didn't have access to internal systems anymore. My credentials were dead. But I had something Darren couldn't revoke, relationships. I called Jaya. You didn't call me to chat, she said the second she answered. I need to know everything you can tell me about Brightstep, I said, silence. Lee, this is risky. I know, she exhaled. Brightstep showed up once before, 2 months ago, smaller payment, 10,000. My stomach tightened. Approved by who? I can't see the full chain, she said, but it was categorized under Darren's cost center. Of course it was. Can you get me anything? I asked. Not directly, Jaya said, but I can tell you this. The bank routing details for Brightstep were changed last week. That's weird. Vendors don't do that often. Who changed it? It shows procurement admin. She paused. That's a role, not a person. Multiple people can access it, including Darren. I ended the call and added to my list. Brightstep exists before Darren cost center routing changed. Procurement admin role. Then I searched my personal email for Marrowgate. Years of messages appeared, benefits reminders, holiday party invites, performance reviews. And there it was. An IT email from months ago about a temporary security update during a backend migration. One sentence I'd skimmed at the time punched me in the face now. During the transition, some users may be prompted to confirm MFA via SMS fallback if authenticator sync fails. SMS fallback. The least secure option disguised as convenience. Darren didn't need my phone if he could force my account onto SMS fallback and then intercept the code. But how would he even know my phone number well enough to do that? Then I remembered. A month earlier, Darren had sent an ops team contact verification spreadsheet to the whole team, claiming it was for emergency preparedness. I'd filled it out. Name, role, cell number, fine. But what else had been on it? I thought about the last month at work. The tiny odd moments I dismissed, like Darren asking us to confirm updated contact info with unusual urgency. My heart started to pick up speed, not panic clarity. I needed a copy of that spreadsheet, and I knew exactly who might still have it. Not Darren, not HR. Toby, our coordinator in operations, who never deleted anything because he lived in fear of the one file someone would ask for later. I texted him. Me, hey Toby, quick question. Do you still have that ops team contact verification spreadsheet Darren sent last month? I'm appealing my termination and trying to confirm something. Even just the headers would help. 5 minutes. Toby, are you okay? Toby, I can't send company files, but the headers were name, role, cell number, emergency contact, and alt-auth method. Toby, I always thought that last one was weird. I sat up so fast I almost knocked over my coffee. Alt-auth method. Darren had asked for authentication fallback information on a spreadsheet. That wasn't emergency preparedness. That was a blueprint. Me. Can you email me just the headers from your personal account? No file, just words, me, and please don't mention you sent it ever. A long pause. Then, Toby, okay. Please don't mention me. An email hit my inbox minutes later. Headers, name, role, cell number, emergency contact, alt-auth method. Sent by Darren Klein on date. It wasn't the smoking gun, but it was a match. Now I needed gasoline. Marrowgate had an appeals process. You could request a termination review within 10 business days. Darren had probably assumed I'd be too embarrassed, too discouraged, too financially panicked to fight. Instead, the next morning, I wrote a polite, painfully professional email. I requested the evidence used to terminate me. Login logs, approval audit trails, vendor onboarding documents. And I requested something else. A formal investigation into potential credential misuse. I didn't accuse Darren by name. Not yet. I kept it clean. Calm, neutral. The kind of email that makes HR's shoulders tense because it sounds like someone who understands procedure. Within an hour, I got the automatic reply. Thank you. A representative will respond within 5-7 business days. 5 to 7 days. Long enough for Darren to scrub whatever he could. So I moved faster. I contacted Myra Sato, a compliance consultant I'd met at a workshop months ago. Someone outside Marrowgate. I didn't ask her to break rules. I asked how credential misuse is usually investigated. Myra didn't sugarcoat it. If the company is serious, they'll check IP addresses, device fingerprints, session tokens. Most logs don't lie, claims fall apart under real audit. What if they don't want to be serious? I asked. Then you create enough risk that they have to be, she said. Not threats, facts. Facts, that was my language. Next, I filed a formal request for my personnel records, as allowed in my state. I wasn't expecting magic, but I knew companies often store more than they realize. 2 days later, a thick envelope arrived. Inside were my performance reviews, strong, consistent. No warnings, no disciplinary notes. No concerns section that would justify a sudden moral collapse at 2:14 a.m. Then I found the termination memo. One line made my skin prickle. Employee acknowledged awareness of policy and accepted responsibility for the authorization. Accepted responsibility. That was a lie. Not vague, not debatable. A clean lie written to make my termination look tidy. I scanned the memo and saved it. Then I added, termination memo contains false statement if they were willing to bend truth on paper. They'd bent it elsewhere, too. I needed proof that my MFA settings had been altered. And for that, I needed the one thing most people forget, internal tickets. A week after my termination, I got a call from Nina, a former coworker who'd left Marrowgate recently and still had friends inside IT coordination. I heard what happened, she said. This is insane. I'm not asking you to do anything illegal, I told her. I know, she said, but Darren asked it something recently. My pulse spiked. What? He put in a ticket through the general portal. One of my friends mentioned it because it was weird. He asked about recovering authenticator access for a team member during travel, something like that. When? I asked. About a week before you got fired, Nina said. I don't have the ticket, but I can ask my friend what they remember. That night, Nina texted me. Nina, friend says Darren's ticket referenced your name. Nina, closed with note. SMS fallback enabled temporarily. I stared at the message until my eyes ached. SMS fallback enabled. For me, by request. By Darren. Now the trap had an outline I could explain. Darren collects phone numbers and alt-auth info. Darren requests SMS fallback. Temporarily. For my account, Darren uses my credentials on an unknown device at 2:14 a.m. Darren routes money to a vendor tied to his cost center. Darren sits across from me and says, "Logs don't lie." I wasn't just angry anymore. I was precise. HR finally replied to my appeal request with corporate-flavored fog. We cannot provide full internal logs. However, we can confirm the authorization originated from your credentials, and the MFA confirmation was completed successfully. Translation. Trust us, I responded immediately. I am requesting an independent review of login origin data, IP, device, session, due to evidence suggesting MFA settings were modified without my consent. I have documentation indicating SMS fallback enabled temporarily for my account shortly before the incident. Within an hour, Mavis called me. Her voice was still polite, but the temperature had dropped. Lee, she said, where did you get that information? I'm appealing my termination, I replied, and I'm asking Marrowgate to investigate whether my MFA settings were changed by someone else. Silence. Lee, Mavis said carefully, if you are alleging internal misconduct, we will need to escalate to compliance. Please do, I said. After the call, I wrote everything down. Date, time, exact phrasing. Corporate memory is selective. Mine wasn't going to be. Over the next week, the air around my former job grew strange. Jaya sent updates in fragments. Jaya, compliance is sniffing around vendor payments. Jaya, Darren looks tense. Like his tie is judging him. That made me smile despite myself. Darren's ties always looked like they'd been chosen by an anxious committee. Toby texted. Toby, Darren asked if anyone talked to you. Toby, I said no. My voice did a weird thing. I think it squeaked. I pictured Toby, terrified and earnest, and laughed. Quietly. Once. That was my 5% humor quota, and I spent it wisely. I replied me. If it squeaks again, tell him it's a new wellness initiative. Meanwhile, I kept pulling threads. I asked Jaya if she could see anything about BrightStep onboarding. Her reply came late at night. Jaya, BrightStep is tagged Legacy Imported. Jaya, that means it was created via bulk import tool. Bulk import was restricted access. Managers in procurement oversight had it, like Darren. At this point, I had a net, not a single smoking gun. But nets work when the fish thinks it's safe. So I did something Darren wouldn't expect. I emailed him. Subject. Clarification request. Hi Darren, for my termination appeal, I'm documenting procedural steps. Can you confirm whether you ever requested IT support related to my authentication access during the system migration period? Thank you, Lee. Why email him? Because people like Darren have two weaknesses. They believe they're smarter than everyone else. They can't resist controlling the narrative. He replied the next morning. 2 sentences. Lee, I did not request any IT changes on your behalf. Please direct all questions to HR. A denial. In writing. Perfect. Because if compliance found the ticket, if they already had it, Darren wasn't just unethical. He'd lied during an investigation. Companies forgive mistakes all day. They don't like lies on the record. 2 weeks after my termination, Mavis emailed me asking me to come in for a meeting. Not a call, not an email chain. A meeting. When I arrived at Marrowgate's building, the lobby looked the same. Polished floors, neutral art, air conditioning that felt like judgment. Security checked my ID, then escorted me upstairs. On the 11th floor, a small conference room waited. Mavis sat there with the compliance director and a man I hadn't met, introduced as an external investigator. No, Darren. Mavis folded her hands. Lee, thank you for coming. We've reviewed your appeal and conducted an internal audit of relevant access logs. My pulse thudded in my ears. Okay. The investigator slid a paper toward me. This wasn't HR language. It was system output, summarized but clear. Login, 2:12 a.m. action, 2:14 a.m. IP address, not my home network device fingerprint, unknown device MFA method, SMS fallback MFA fallback enabled. 1 week prior requester. Darren Klein. For a moment, my body didn't know what to do with the information. Relief, rage, vindication, everything tried to speak at once. Mavis cleared her throat. The audit indicates your account was accessed using a method you did not initiate. I kept my voice steady. So I didn't authorize the payment. The compliance director nodded. No, the investigator continued. The vendor Brightstep Consulting was created via bulk import under Darren Klein's administrative privileges. The routing details were modified from his workstation. There it was, clean, documented, real. I looked at Mavis. And the termination memo that says I accepted responsibility. Her face tightened slightly. We will be correcting your file. Correcting, like my life had been a typo. I didn't let the bitterness take over. I focused on the outcome. What happens now? I asked. The compliance director chose his words like they were fragile. Darren Klein's employment has been terminated, effective immediately, for policy violations and misconduct. Terminated. No drama, no spectacle, just removed. Mavis added quickly, we are reversing the termination decision for you. Your separation will be reclassified, and you will receive back pay for the period you were out. Back pay mattered, but I wanted something else more. My name, I said quietly. I want it clear internally that I was not responsible. Mavis nodded. We will issue a clarification. The investigator slid another document forward, an offer letter. I blinked. What is this? The compliance director said. During the audit, we reviewed your work history. Your performance is strong. We also identified gaps in leadership within procurement oversight. I stared at the title. Interim Manager, Procurement Oversight. Darren's role. My throat tightened. You're offering me his job. Mavis spoke as if trying to move past discomfort. Yes, standard probationary period. But yes, Darren had tried to erase me from the org chart. Instead, he'd erased himself. I set the offer letter down and looked up. I'll accept, I said, with one condition. Mavis's eyes narrowed slightly. What condition? That the clarification includes my name, I said. Not an employee, not vague language, my name on record. A pause, then the compliance director nodded. Reasonable. Mavis hesitated, then nodded too, like she'd swallowed something sour. I signed. My hand didn't shake. My first day back at Marrowgate felt unreal. Same building, same elevator smell, same lobby art pretending to be meaningful. Different badge, different title, different gravity in the air when people saw me. The rumor machine had already done its work. People tried not to stare. They failed. Some gave sympathetic smiles. Some avoided eye contact. A few looked genuinely relieved, like honesty had been restored to the universe and they could breathe again. Jaya met me near the elevators. She didn't hug me, Marrowgate wasn't built for hugs, but she bumped my shoulder with hers. You look expensive now, she said, eyeing my blazer. It was on sale, I replied. Justice doesn't always come with a wardrobe budget. She grinned. So you're Darren's replacement. I'm Darren's consequence, I said. We both laughed quietly. Not much, just enough. In my new office, still smelling faintly of Darren's cologne and overconfidence, I found a sticky note on the desk. Trust anyone. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I flipped it over and wrote, trust but verify, and stuck it to my monitor. Because that was the real lesson. Not that everyone was out to get me, but that systems, corporate systems especially, are only as honest as the people operating them. That afternoon, an internal email went out. Following a thorough review, Marrowgate Solutions has determined that Lee R. Hart was not responsible for the unauthorized vendor transaction that led to her separation. Her record has been corrected, and she has returned to the company in a leadership capacity. Marrowgate remains committed to maintaining secure and ethical practices. My name, printed, official, on record. I forwarded it to my personal email, and saved it in 3 places because I had learned, the hard way, that truth deserves backups. Darren, meanwhile, became a story people told in lowered voices. Some said he'd been under pressure. Some said he'd been greedy. Some said he'd simply believed he'd never get caught. The truth was probably simpler. A man who wanted control and thought the easiest way to gain it was by pushing someone else down. What he didn't count on was my particular type of stubborn. He thought shame would keep me quiet. Instead, I treated my downfall like a case file. And the funny thing about evidence is, it doesn't care who has the corner office. A month later, I ran my first all-hands meeting as interim manager. The room filled. Procurement analysts, vendor specialists, finance partners, compliance observers. People with notebooks open, pretending they weren't curious about how the woman who'd been fired was now running the meeting. I clicked the first slide. Process integrity. Protecting our team and our work. I didn't say Darren's name. I didn't need to. I talked about access control and why convenience becomes vulnerability. I explained why no manager should ever collect personal authentication information, period. Then I introduced a new policy. Any MFA setting change required dual approval from IT security and compliance, with the employee present. No exceptions. Some people nodded immediately. Some looked uncomfortable. Good. Comfort is where shortcuts grow. At the end, a junior analyst raised her hand. New, nervous. How did you handle it? She asked. Being accused like that? The room went quiet, the kind of quiet that means everyone is listening. I chose my words carefully. I kept a timeline, I said. I wrote everything down, I asked questions. I stayed calm in writing even when I wasn't calm inside. And I didn't let someone else's story become my reality. I paused, then added, and if someone tells you the logs don't lie, ask them which logs they're looking at. A small ripple of laughter moved through the room. Not much, just enough. After the meeting, Toby approached me like I was a wild animal that might bolt. Lee, he said, voice slightly squeaky, consistent brand. I'm really glad you're back. Thanks, Toby, I said. And for the record, your headers helped save me. His eyes widened. They did, I said. Also, I'm removing Alt-Auth method from every spreadsheet forever. Toby exhaled so dramatically I almost applauded. Later, alone in my office, I looked out at Larkspur City's skyline. Everything looked the same. But it wasn't. My name was clear. My work had weighed again. And the person who tried to bury me was gone, not because I shouted, not because I begged, but because I refused to let the truth be buried under convenient paperwork. I opened a new vendor request that had come in. Clean, proper, normal. For the first time in weeks, my chest felt quiet, not because the world had become fair, but because I'd proven something to myself. You can be walked out with a cardboard box. You can be written off in a memo. You can be turned into a cautionary tale whispered near the coffee machine. And still, if you're patient, smart, and relentless, you can walk back in through the front doors and take the seat they tried to keep for themselves. I clicked approve, then stopped and looked at the sticky note on my monitor. Trust, but verify. I smiled once, small, private, and got back to work.